May 3, 1942. 1,447 hours. 22,000 feet above Tulagi Harbor, Solomon Islands. The Mitsubishi A6M Zero climbs through scattered cumulus like a predator born for the hunt. Its engine hums with precision, Nakajima Sakae radial spinning flawlessly in the tropical heat. Inside the cramped cockpit, Petty Officer First Class Tadayoshi Koga scans the horizon, his gloved hand resting lightly on the control column. Below him, the turquoise waters of the Solomon Sea shimmer under the afternoon sun. Smoke rises in dark columns from Tulagi, where Japanese seaplanes and supply vessels burn under the relentless bombing runs of American carrier aircraft. Koga is 24 years old. A veteran of the China campaigns. His Zero bears no markings of inexperience, only the rising sun insignia on its wings and the quiet confidence of a machine that has never been bested in combat. The Type 99 20mm cannons in his wings are loaded. The 7.7mm machine gun synchronized. He is part of a 5-plane formation from the carrier Ryujo, scrambled to intercept enemy dive bombers withdrawing from their strike. Then he sees them .4 Douglas SBD Dauntless dive bombers, lumbering northward in loose formation, their bomb racks empty and their rear gunners swiveling their twin .30 caliber mounts nervously. They're slow. Vulnerable. Returning to their carrier like wounded animals retreating to cover. Koga doesn't hesitate. He banks hard left, his wingman mirroring the movement. The Zero responds instantly, no lag, no sluggishness. Just pure, obedient acceleration. In seconds, he's diving at over 300 knots, the wind shrieking past the canopy as the altimeter unwinds. The Americans haven't seen him yet. They're flying straight and level, trusting distance and altitude to keep them safe. They're wrong. Koga's finger tightens on the firing button. The reticle of his gun sight drifts onto the trailing Dauntless. Range, 250 meters. Closing fast. His heart is calm. His breathing steady. This is what he was trained for. This is what the Zero was built for, but something is different today, something neither Koga nor any pilot in the Imperial Japanese Navy Air Service can yet see, a crack forming in the myth of invincibility. A flaw so fundamental that within weeks, it will cost Japan its greatest tactical advantage in the Pacific. The Americans are learning, and somewhere far below, on the marshy, fog-soaked tundra of a remote Aleutian island, a discovery is waiting that will change everything. Koga presses the trigger, the Zero's cannons roar to life. 6 months earlier. December 7, 1941. Pearl Harbor, the Zero first appeared over Oahu like something out of a fever dream. Faster than anything the Americans had seen. More maneuverable than seemed physically possible. Pilots who survived that morning described the same thing, a sleek, low-wing monoplane that could turn inside a Wildcat, outclimb a P-40, and vanish into the clouds before you could line up a shot. In the weeks that followed, the reports multiplied. Over Wake Island, over the Philippines, over Java and Burma, the Zero carved through Allied air defenses like they didn't exist. American pilots bailed out of burning Brewster Buffaloes. British Hurricane squadrons were decimated over Singapore. Dutch pilots in obsolete biplanes didn't stand a chance, and the stories spread, stories that the Zero could turn on a dime. That it could climb at impossible angles. That Japanese pilots were somehow superhuman, able to withstand G-forces that would black out Western aviators. Some intelligence officers speculated the aircraft was made of advanced lightweight alloys stolen from German research. Others believed the Japanese had copied a secret Italian design. They were all wrong, the truth was simpler. And far more dangerous. The Zero wasn't built from stolen technology. It was built from ruthless engineering philosophy. Every unnecessary ounce stripped away. No armor plating behind the pilot's seat. No self-sealing fuel tanks. No heavy radio equipment. The airframe was aluminum and fabric, light, agile, and as fragile as paper when hit. But nobody knew that yet, because nobody had captured one intact. American fighter pilots tried to engage Zeros in dogfights and died. They tried to outturn them and stalled into the sea. They tried to climb away and were picked off from above. By May 1942, the kill ratio was staggering. For every Zero lost, the Japanese were downing 10 Allied aircraft. The U.S. Navy needed answers. The Army Air Forces needed a solution. And both knew the same terrible truth: you cannot defeat an enemy you don't understand. Somewhere in a hangar in San Diego, engineers pored over grainy gun camera footage, trying to extrapolate the Zero's flight characteristics from blurred frames. In Washington, intelligence analysts studied wreckage pulled from jungle crash sites, twisted metal fragments that revealed nothing about how the aircraft flew. What they needed was the real thing. A complete Zero. Flyable. Testable. Measurable, and on a gray, windswept island in the Aleutian chain, where fog rolls in like a living thing and the ground never fully thaws, fate was about to deliver exactly that, but not yet. First, Petty Officer Tadayoshi Koga has to die. May 3, 1942. 1,449 hours. 18,000 feet above Tulagi Harbor, the dogless gunner sees him half a second before Koga fires. He screams into the intercom, a wordless warning, and swings his twin Brownings hard right. The tracers arc out in bright orange streams, wild and desperate. Koga's first burst misses low, his 20mm shells ripping past the dauntless belly and detonating harmlessly in empty air. But the American gunner's rounds don't miss. .3.30 caliber bullets punch through the Zero's engine cowling in rapid succession. One fragments against the Sakai radial's crankcase. Another severs an oil line. The third, by pure chance, nicks the edge of Koga's left boot, tearing through leather and grazing his ankle. The pain is instant. Sharp. Electric. Koga jerks in the cockpit, his hand spasming on the stick. The Zero lurches right, overshooting the Dauntless as black smoke begins streaming from the engine cowling. He can smell it immediately: hot oil vaporizing, metal grinding against metal. The cylinder head temperature gauge is climbing. Fast that he pulls back on the throttle. Levels out. His ankle throbs, warm blood pooling in his boot. It's not a serious wound. He's had worse in training accidents, but the engine damage is critical. The oil pressure is dropping. 15 seconds ago, he was the hunter. Now he's wounded prey, 1,200 miles from his carrier, over enemy-controlled waters. His radio crackles. His wingman's voice, tense and clipped: "Koga-san, you're trailing smoke. Break off. Return to base." Koga doesn't respond. He's already calculating. Distance to Ryujo, 280 nautical miles. Fuel remaining, enough for maybe 90 minutes if the engine holds. But the engine won't hold. The vibrations are worsening. The propeller is starting to windmill unevenly. He banks northwest, away from the American formation. Below him, the Solomon Islands stretch out in a chain of green volcanic peaks and white coral beaches. Uninhabited. Unreachable. If he ditches in the ocean, he'll drown or be eaten by sharks before rescue arrives. He needs land. Friendly land. His squadron leader had briefed them that morning about forward staging bases. The Japanese had just occupied Shortland Island. There were fuel depots at Bougainville. Emergency airstrips being carved out of jungle. But those are all too far. He's losing altitude at 200 feet per minute. The engine is seizing. Then he remembers: Dutch Harbor. The Aleutians. The diversionary operation. No, wait. That's not until June. Weeks away. And thousands of miles north. His thoughts are scattering. The pain in his ankle is spreading up his leg. Shock, maybe. Blood loss. He shakes his head, trying to focus. The engine temperature gauge is buried in the red. The oil pressure is nearly zero. He has maybe 10 minutes of flight time left, maybe less. Koga keys his radio one last time. His voice is calm. Measured. The voice of a samurai accepting his fate. Engine failure. Attempting forced landing. Do not follow. He doesn't wait for a response. He noses down, picking up speed, scanning the islands below for anything flat. Anything survivable, and in that moment, though he doesn't know it yet, Petty Officer First Class Tadayoshi Koga has just made the most important decision of the Pacific War. One that will outlive him by decades. May 3, 1942. 1,453 hours. Aleutian Island, Aleutian Chain. The island appears through the haze like a ghost. Koga has never heard of Aleutian. Couldn't find it on a map if he tried. It's a speck of volcanic rock 90 miles northeast of Dutch harbor, treeless, windswept, and inhabited only by seabirds and the occasional Aleut hunting party. The landscape is brutal. Tundra and black stone. Fog that never fully lifts. Mountains that rise steeply from the coastline, their peaks hidden in low-hanging clouds. But there, on the eastern slope, is a patch of green. A flat stretch of grassland, maybe 800 meters long. Narrow. Marshy. But flat. It's the best he's going to get. Koga drops flaps. Lowers his landing gear. The Zero shudders as the hydraulics engage, the fixed tailwheel locking into place beneath the fuselage. His airspeed bleeds off 120 knots, 110, 100. The engine is barely running now, coughing and sputtering, the propeller barely generating thrust. He's gliding more than flying. The wind is gusting from the west. Crosswind. Maybe 15 knots. He compensates, crabbing slightly left, his eyes locked on the grassland below. Distance, 1 kilometer. Altitude, 400 feet. He's committed now. No second chances. No go around. The Zero descends through 200 feet. The grass rushes up to meet him. He can see individual tufts now, swaying in the wind. Water glistening between them. His hand tightens on the stick. 50 feet. 30. He flares, nose up, bleeding off the last of his speed. The main gear kisses the ground. Smooth. Perfect. A textbook landing, for exactly 2 seconds. Then the wheels sink. The grassland isn't grassland. It's muskeg, a thick, waterlogged mat of moss and sedge growing over permafrost. Soft as a sponge. Deceptive. The Zero's wheels punch through the surface and hit mud. The aircraft pitches forward violently. The nose drops. The propeller strikes earth and shatters, fragments spinning away in all directions. Koga's head snaps forward into the instrument panel. The impact is catastrophic. His forehead strikes the gun sight mounting with a sickening crack. His vision explodes into white light, then darkness. Blood streams down his face. His body goes limp against the harness straps. The Zero slides another 20 meters, carving a deep furrow through the muskeg, before finally lurching to a stop. The engine dies with a metallic groan. Steam hisses from ruptured coolant lines. The cockpit canopy is still closed. Intact. Inside, Petty Officer First Class Tadayoshi Koga does not move. His chest rises once. Twice, then stops. That he is 24 years old. He will never see Japan again. Never know that his wife is pregnant. Never learn that his son will be born 3 months from now and named in his honor. But his Zero, serial number 4593, sits upright in the Aleutian mud. Undamaged except for the broken propeller and minor engine cowling punctures. The wings are intact. The fuselage is straight. The controls are functional. And for 5 weeks, it sits there, alone, invisible in the fog, until an American patrol plane, flying a routine reconnaissance sweep over Aleutian Island, spots something impossible. A shape that doesn't belong. A glint of metal where there should be only stone and grass. June 10, 1942. 0920 hours. 38 days after the crash. Lieutenant William Bill Thies banks his PBY Catalina into a lazy turn over Aleutian's eastern shore, his co-pilot marking their position on the navigation chart. They've been flying search patterns over the Aleutians for 6 hours, looking for downed aircraft, survivors from the Battle of Dutch Harbor, anything the Japanese might have left behind after their raid 2 weeks earlier. The fog is lifting. Rare for this godforsaken stretch of the North Pacific. Thies drops to 800 feet, scanning the coastline through his side window. Black rock. Green muskeg. Seabirds scattering in their wake. Nothing unusual. He's about to key the radio and report negative contact when his co-pilot taps his shoulder. Bill. 9 o'clock. On the slope. Thies looks and his breath catches. At first, it's just a shape. Something angular and wrong against the organic curves of the tundra. He banks harder, circling back. The morning sun breaks through the cloud layer, and suddenly, unmistakably, there it is. An aircraft, intact. Wings level. Tail upright. The rising sun insignia visible even from 800 feet. Holy hell, Thies whispers. That's a zero. His co-pilot is already on the radio, transmitting coordinates to Dutch Harbor. Thies drops lower, his propellers churning the air just 200 feet above the crash site. He can see the furrow carved through the muskeg. The shattered propeller. The closed canopy. No movement. No sign of the pilot. He circles twice more, photographing the site from multiple angles with the Catalina's oblique camera. Then he climbs back to altitude and sets course for Dutch Harbor, his heart hammering in his chest. Because every pilot in the Pacific knows what this means. They found the Holy Grail, June 12, 1942. Dutch Harbor Naval Operating Base. The recovery team arrives by boat, 12 Navy salvage specialists, 2 Marine guards, and a young intelligence officer named Lieutenant Robert Kermsey who looks like he hasn't slept in 3 days. They land on Akutan's rocky beach at low tide, then hike 2 miles inland through knee-deep muskeg, hauling ropes and winches and cutting torches. When they crest the ridge and see the Zero for the first time, they stop. Just stopped at it smaller than they expected. More delicate. The aluminum skin is flawless, no bullet holes, no fire damage. It sits in the mud like a museum piece, waiting to be discovered. One of the Marines whistles low. Looks brand new. Kermsey approaches slowly, almost reverently. He's seen Zeros before, in gun camera footage, in blurred reconnaissance photos, but never like this. Never close enough to touch. He runs his hand along the wing's leading edge. The metal is cold. Smooth. Then he climbs onto the wing and peers into the cockpit. The pilot is still there, slumped forward against his harness, head resting on the instrument panel. His flight suit is stained dark brown with dried blood. His face is peaceful. Eyes closed. He looks like he's sleeping. Kermsey's throat tightens. He's 23 years old. The dead pilot looks younger. Sir. One of the salvage chiefs calls up. What do you want to do? Kermsey takes a breath. Forces himself into professional detachment. Bury him with honors. Mark the grave. Then disassemble the aircraft and prepare it for transport. I want every bolt, every panel, every instrument labeled and photographed. This thing needs to reach the mainland intact. How intact, sir? Kermsey looks at the Zero one more time. At its clean lines. Its impossible likeness. Flyable, he says quietly. We're going to make it flyable. July 15, 1942. North Island Naval Air Station, San Diego, California. The crates arrive on a flatbed truck at 0600 hours, escorted by armed Marines who won't tell anyone what they're guarding. 23 wooden boxes, each stenciled with cryptic codes and marked confidential in red paint. The hangar they're delivered to, Hangar 6, on the far edge of the airfield, has been cleared of all non-essential personnel. Guards are posted at every entrance. Inside, a team of engineers and test pilots waits. Lieutenant Commander Eddie R. Sanders stands at the center of the hangar floor, arms crossed, watching as the crates are pried open one by one. Sanders is a combat veteran. Flew Wildcats off the Saratoga at Coral Sea. He's seen Zeros up close, usually in his gunsight, usually closing fast. He's also seen good men die because they didn't understand what they were fighting. Now, spread across the hangar floor in carefully labeled pieces, is the answer. The Zero's wings are remarkably thin. Almost fragile-looking. Sanders runs his hand along the trailing edge and realizes he can feel the aluminum flex under his fingers. No armor. No reinforcement. Just lightweight stressed skin over a skeletal frame. Jesus, he mutters. It's made of tin foil. One of the engineers, a civilian named James Ramsey from Grumman Aircraft, kneels beside the fuselage, examining the fuel tank mountings. He taps the metal with his knuckle. It rings hollow. No self-sealing bladders, Ramsey says. One tracer round in this and the whole thing goes up like a Zippo. Sanders moves to the cockpit. The instrument panel has been removed and laid out on a workbench. Japanese characters label every dial and switch. The control stick is simple. Elegant. A few buttons, a trigger. Nothing extraneous. How long to reassemble? Sanders asks. Ramsey looks at the scattered components. Exhaust stacks. Control cables. Landing gear struts. Dozens of small parts that need to be precisely fitted, aligned, tested. 3 weeks if we rush. 5 to do it right. You have 2. Ramsey blinks. Sir, with all respect. 2 weeks, Sanders repeats. Every day we don't understand this aircraft, we're sending pilots up to die. I need it flying. I need to know how it moves. How it thinks. He pauses. I need to know how to kill it. They work around the clock. Welders fabricate replacement parts for the damaged propeller hub. Mechanics meticulously rebuild the Sakai engine, replacing the oil lines Koga's gunner severed. The control surfaces are reattached, cables tensioned to exact specifications found in captured Japanese maintenance manuals. A new 3-bladed propeller is machined from blueprints extrapolated from photographs. And slowly, impossibly, the Zero comes back to life. By July 28, the aircraft sits complete on the hangar floor. Fresh gray-green paint covers the fuselage. The rising sun insignia has been replaced with American white stars. But the shape is unmistakable. Predatory. Beautiful. Sanders circles it slowly, his pulse quickening. Tomorrow, they'll taxi test. The day after, if the engine holds, they'll attempt flight. But tonight, standing alone in the hangar with only the night watch as witness, Sanders places his hand on the Zero's nose and makes a silent promise. To every pilot we've lost. Every Wildcat driver who went down trying to turn with you. Every squadron that got cut to pieces over Wake and Coral Sea. We're going to learn your secrets. And then we're going to use them to destroy you. Outside, the California night is warm and still. Inside Hangar 6, the captured Zero waits a trophy, a teacher, and a weapon all at once. Its original pilot sleeps in an unmarked grave on a cold Aleutian island, 2,400 miles away. His aircraft is about to betray everything he died for. August 1, 1942. 0745 hours. North Island Naval Air Station. The engine catches on the 4th attempt. Sanders sits in the cockpit, Koga's cockpit, his hands on controls that once guided a different pilot through a different war. The Sakai radial coughs black smoke, then settles into a rough but steady idle. The whole airframe vibrates. Instrument needles flicker to life behind Japanese characters he spent 2 weeks learning to read, oil pressure, nominal. Cylinder head temperature, rising normally. Fuel flow, adequate. He advances the throttle slightly. The engine responds, eager, alive. Through the canopy, he can see engineers watching from the hangar entrance. Clipboards ready. Stopwatches in hand. Every second of this flight will be measured, documented, analyzed. Sanders takes a breath. Then releases the brakes. The Zero rolls forward smoothly, surprisingly light on its narrow landing gear. He taxis to the end of runway 29, testing the rudder pedals, feeling how the tail responds. Everything is sensitive. Immediate. Like the aircraft is reading his thoughts before his muscles can act. At the runway threshold, he runs through the pre-flight checks one final time. Propeller, full fine pitch. Mixture, rich. Trim, neutral. His heart is hammering now, not from fear, but from anticipation. He's about to become the first American pilot to fly a Zero. Sanders pushes the throttle to the stop. The Sakai engine roars a high, angry scream and the Zero leaps forward. Acceleration is instantaneous. Brutal. He's at 40 knots before he can process it. 60. 80. The stick goes light in his hand. At 90 knots, the tail lifts. At 100, the wheels break free from the concrete and he's climbing. Climbing like nothing he's ever flown. The altimeter unwinds in a blur. 500 feet. 1,000, 2,000. He's barely touched the stick and the Zero is clawing upward at 3,000 feet per minute, twice the rate of his Wildcat. The Pacific Ocean spreads out below, glittering in the morning sun. The California coast stretches north and south. And Sanders starts to laugh. Not from joy. From understanding. Because now, finally, he gets it. He banks left. The Zero responds instantly, rolling 90 degrees with barely a touch of aileron. No lag. No hesitation. He pulls back on the stick and the nose comes up, bleeding off speed but gaining altitude. He kicks the rudder and the aircraft snaps into a knife-edge turn that would black out most pilots. But there's no weight to the controls. No resistance. It's like flying air itself. He tries everything. Hammerhead stalls. Split S reversals. Snap rolls at low speed. The Zero executes each maneuver flawlessly, effortlessly. When he chops the throttle and pulls into a slow-speed turn, the aircraft doesn't stall, it just rotates on its axis like a compass needle, bleeding off speed without losing control. Now he understands why American pilots died trying to dogfight this thing. You can't outturn it. Can't outclimb it. Can't slow fight it. But Sanders pushes the stick forward, diving toward the ocean. The airspeed builds quickly. 200 knots. 250, 300. The airframe begins to shake. The controls stiffen. At 320 knots, the stick is nearly immovable, locked solid by aerodynamic pressure. And suddenly, Sanders sees the flaw. The Zero is a scalpel. But scalpels are fragile. He pulls out of the dive gently, too much G-force and the lightweight wings might snap, and climbs back to 10,000 feet. His mind is racing now, tactical calculations forming that if you try to turn with a Zero, you die. If you try to climb with it, you die. But if you dive away at high speed, the Zero can't follow. Its controls lock up. It can't pursue. And when it tries to climb back to altitude, slow and vulnerable, that's when you bounce it from above with speed and altitude advantage. Boom and zoom. Hit and run, never turn. Never slow down. Use the Wildcat's superior high-speed handling and diving ability. Use its armor and self-sealing tanks to absorb hits the Zero can't. It's not elegant. But it will work. Sanders keys his radio, his voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. North Island Tower, Zeke 1. Flight characteristics confirmed. Recommend immediate tactical briefing for all Pacific fighter squadrons. I repeat, tactical briefing required immediately. He doesn't say what he's thinking. We can beat this thing. We can beat it. Below, engineers are already writing. The memo will be typed tonight. Distributed to every carrier, every airfield, every squadron in the Pacific within 48 hours, the myth of the invincible Zero is about to die. Born from one pilot's courage. Preserved by one pilot's sacrifice. Destroyed by one pilot's discovery. August 3, 1942. 1,600 hours. Office of Naval Intelligence, Washington, D.C. The report lands on Admiral Ernest J. King's desk with a soft thud. 47 pages. Densely typed. Stamped top secret in red ink across every page. King, Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Fleet, opens it slowly, his reading glasses perched on his nose. The title page is simple. Tactical Analysis, Mitsubishi A6M Type 0 Carrier Fighter Serial No. 4593, Aleutian Recovery. He reads for 20 minutes without pause. Performance Data. Maneuverability Assessments. Structural Analysis. And finally, on page 43, the tactical recommendations that will change everything. Never attempt to dogfight the Zero in a turning engagement. Never attempt to climb at low speeds in its presence. Instead, maintain speed advantage, attack from altitude, dive through the engagement, and extend away at high speed. The Zero cannot follow in high-speed dives due to control stiffening. Repeat attacks using vertical tactics only. King removes his glasses. Leans back in his chair. This is it. The key they've been searching for since Pearl Harbor. Within 72 hours, every fighter squadron in the Pacific receives the memo. Pilots read it in ready rooms aboard carriers steaming toward Guadalcanal. They study it in tents on Henderson Field. They memorize it before dawn patrol over Rabaul. And slowly, engagement by engagement, the tide begins to turn. At Guadalcanal, Marine Wildcat pilots use the new tactics to shred Zero formations that once seemed untouchable. Over the Solomon Islands, Navy fighters bounce Japanese raids from above, diving through at 400 knots and escaping before the Zeros can respond. The kill ratio shifts. 5-1 becomes 3-1. Then 2-1. By 1943, American pilots are winning. Not because their aircraft improved, though they did. Not because Japanese pilots got worse, though attrition took its toll. But because one Zero, recovered from one nameless island, taught them the one thing they needed to know. Every weapon has a weakness. You just have to survive long enough to find it. Present day. National Museum of Naval Aviation, Pensacola, Florida. The Zero hangs suspended from the ceiling of Gallery 2, preserved behind velvet ropes and climate-controlled glass. Its gray-green paint is faded now. The white stars are chipped. But the lines are still elegant. Still predatory. Visitors walk beneath it every day. School children. Veterans. Historians. Most don't know the story. Don't know about Koga, or Aleutian Island, or the 2 weeks of frantic reconstruction in Hangar 6. But sometimes, rarely, an old pilot will stop. Will stand beneath those wings and just stare. Because they know. They know that this aircraft, this one specific Zero out of 10,000 built, killed the myth that cost so many lives in 1942. That its recovery was worth more than a dozen carriers. That the intelligence it provided saved thousands of Allied pilots who never knew they'd been saved. And they know about the young Japanese pilot who crashed it into the Aleutian mud. Who died in his cockpit, alone and far from home. Who never knew that his final forced landing would become one of the war's greatest intelligence coups. Tadayoshi Koga rests in that unmarked grave still. The Aleutian winds blow over it. The fog rolls in and out. His name appears in no American history books. No monuments mark where he fell. But his Zero, serial number 4593, hangs in a museum for eternity. A testament to courage, sacrifice, and the cruel mathematics of war. Where one man's death becomes another man's survival. Where tragedy becomes triumph. Where the hunter becomes the teacher. And if you haven't already, subscribe to WW2 Battlefields and turn on notifications. We are dedicated to rescuing stories like Koga's fatal landing from the dusty footnotes of history. Every week, we dive into the archives to bring you tales of impossible courage, tactical brilliance, and ordinary men who did extraordinary things on the battlefields of World War II. Now, we want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell us, where are you watching from today? Did someone in your family serve in the Pacific? Just let us know you're here. You're not just a viewer, you're part of the community keeping the memory of these warriors alive. Thank you for watching. Thank you for remembering.